This is sterling vengeance. Sit back, relax, and hear what really happened in this family story.
I forgot my phone at the restaurant after dinner with my son. When I returned, the sommelier locked the door and whispered, "Stay quiet. I'm going to show you the footage from the camera above your table, but promise me you won't faint." What my son did in that video brought me to my knees. For 6 months, my son had been poisoning me, laughing as I lost my senses, planning to steal a $120 million legacy. He thought I was dying. He had no idea this was just the beginning. What I did in those 5 days changed everything. But first, where in the world are you hearing this story? Comment your location below. I forgot my phone at the restaurant. When I returned to the French Laundry 20 minutes later, the sommelier met me at the door. Hannah Brooks, her name tag read. But instead of handing me my phone, she locked the door behind me. "Mr. Beaumont," she whispered, "you need to see something." Her hands shook as she led me past the empty dining room into a cramped storage room. My phone sat beside a security monitor, forgotten. Hannah pulled up footage from earlier that evening, her fingers trembling on the keyboard. "I could lose my job for this," she said, "but I can't stay quiet." The screen showed table 12, my table, the dinner that had ended an hour ago. Let me back up. Earlier that evening, I'd been struggling to taste a $200 Cabernet. The wine was supposed to be magnificent. Harlan Estate 96 points. But to me it was just liquid. The complex notes I should have tasted were ghosts. "Dad, you look awful." Benjamin leaned forward, concern etched across his face. My son, 37 years old, vice president of sales at Beaumont Estate Winery. "These dizzy spells are getting worse." Beside him, Francesca nodded. My daughter-in-law draped in emerald silk and too much gold. "The doctor said it's age-related degeneration, Theodore. You need to step back before something serious happens." The room swayed when I turned my head. I'd been losing my sense of smell for months. Taste followed. The dizziness came in waves, unpredictable and terrifying. At 68, maybe they were right. Maybe my body was giving out. "The power of attorney papers," Benjamin said gently. "Sign them next week. Let me handle the day-to-day operations. You can finally rest." 40 years I'd built that winery. 3 generations of Beaumont blood in that soil. But I couldn't taste my own wines anymore. I'd fainted twice in the past month. "Fine," I said. "I'll sign next week." The relief on Benjamin's face should have comforted me. Instead, something cold settled in my chest. We finished dinner. I left my phone on the table, didn't realize until I was halfway home. Turned back, expecting nothing more than a quick retrieval. Hannah Brooks gave me the truth instead. On the monitor, I watched the dinner replay. Watched myself stand and walk toward the restroom. The moment my back turned, Benjamin moved. Quick and practiced, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small vial, clear liquid. He uncapped it with his thumb and poured it into my wine glass, the glass I'd drunk from when I returned. Francesca saw. She didn't stop him. She turned her body, shielding him from view, and smiled. But that wasn't the worst part. After I sat back down and drank, after I'd grimaced at the taste, I could barely detect. Benjamin waited until I looked away. Then he hunched his shoulders and let his head wobble, mimicking my tremor. His face twisted in a cruel parody of my confusion, and Francesca laughed, silent on the footage but unmistakable. My son, poisoning me, mocking me. My knees buckled. I hit the floor of that storage room, Hannah's hands catching my shoulders. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying. "I'm so sorry. I don't know how I made it outside." Hannah steadied me across the parking lot, my phone clutched in a hand that wouldn't stop shaking. The night air should have smelled like jasmine. The gardens were famous for it. But I smelled nothing. Just absence where my senses used to be. "You can't drive like this," Hannah said. "I'm fine." "You're not." Her young face was fierce under the parking lot lights. "What are you going to do?" One thought burned through the shock. I had 5 days. The board meeting was Friday. If I did nothing by next week, Benjamin would control everything. By next month, I'd be warehoused in some coastal condo, while my son destroyed 40 years of work. "This ends Friday," I said. The words surprised me with their certainty. I'd watched my son poison me, watched him laugh about it. Whatever illness I thought I had, whatever age-related degeneration the doctors diagnosed, it was a lie. Benjamin had been poisoning me for months, maybe longer. making me weak enough to sign away my life's work. But I had 5 days. 5 days to figure out what he'd used, why he'd done it, and how to stop him. 5 days to save everything my family had built over 3 generations. Hannah Brooks squeezed my arm. "Tell me how I can help." I didn't have an answer yet, but standing in that parking lot, betrayal still fresh as an open wound, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. This ended Friday. The carriage house lab smelled like my father oak rubbing alcohol, and 40 years of careful work distilled into chemical traces. Past midnight when I unlocked the door, but sleep wasn't an option. Not after watching my son poison me on camera. The fluorescent lights buzzed to life above my head, illuminating equipment my grandfather had brought from France. Glass beakers and copper distillation coils polished by 3 generations of use. Tonight, I needed them to tell me exactly how Benjamin was killing me. I cut the wine-stained fabric from my jacket sleeve with surgical scissors and placed it in a test tube. Added solvent sealed it, gave it a shake. The stain dissolved into cloudy liquid. While it processed, I pulled down toxicology textbooks I hadn't opened since graduate school at UC Davis. If there was poison in my system, the chemical breakdown would reveal it. Everything left traces, even betrayal. The chromatography equipment took 90 minutes to warm up and run the sample. I spent that time pacing the lab, my mind cycling through possibilities. What compound could destroy taste and smell without killing outright? What would make a doctor diagnose age-related degeneration instead of poisoning when the printout finally emerged? I had my answer. 2 chemical peaks, sharp and unmistakable. Zinc chelate, a compound that bound to zinc in the bloodstream and flushed it out through the kidneys. And sulfite receptor blocker industrial chemistry used in wine production testing, never meant for human consumption. Together they were brilliant. Evil, but brilliant. Zinc deficiency destroyed taste and smell, gradually mimicking natural aging. The sulfite blocker specifically targeted the receptors that detected wine compounds sabotaging the one sense I'd built my entire life around. I'd been losing my palate not because of age, but because Benjamin was systematically dismantling it. The most important discovery: both compounds were temporary. Stop the exposure supplement with zinc and my senses would return. Slowly, but completely. Benjamin hadn't wanted me dead. He'd wanted me broken, confused, desperate enough to sign away everything I'd built. I left the lab and went into the main house. Benjamin and Francesca had driven back to their San Francisco apartment. After dinner, they kept a place in the city, visited the estate 3 or 4 times a week. The house was mine. I started with the kitchen. The vitamin bottles Benjamin had given me 3 months ago sat cheerfully in the cabinet. Nature's Strength. Zinc support formula for your health, Dad. I peeled away the label. Underneath, in stark black and red, Vintech Global. Industrial Solutions Division. Sample batch, Alpha 7. Not vitamins. The poison itself repackaged. In Benjamin's old bedroom, I found more. Empty vials in the bathroom trash, each embossed with the same logo. Property of Vintech Global, not for resale. Someone had been supplying him. Someone with access to industrial chemicals and a complete absence of conscience. His desk drawer held the final piece. Gambling debts. Casino markers from Las Vegas, Reno, Atlantic City. Credit card statements with cash advances circled in desperate red ink. $3.2 million. Payment due in 90 days. 3 months. The same timeline as my symptoms. If I signed next week, Benjamin would control a winery worth $120 million. More than enough to clear his debts. More than enough to justify destroying his father in the process. I sat at my father's old desk, surrounded by evidence. Behind me, Catherine's photograph smiled from its shelf, her laughing face frozen 20 years ago in this same room. I couldn't face this alone. Benjamin had a partner. Someone at Vintech Global who'd provided the compounds helped plan this. I needed help from someone I trusted absolutely. I reached for my phone and found Martin Cross's number. He answered on the second ring, voice rough. "Theodore, it's 3 a.m. I need you at the estate," I said. "Now. And Martin, don't tell anyone." Silence. "Then I'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up and looked at the vials lined up on my desk. Vintech Global. By Friday, I'd know who they were. And they'd learn what happened when you came after a Beaumont. Saturday morning, I made the call that would set everything in motion. My voice shook, not from weakness, but from the effort of sounding weak. Benjamin, I can't wait until next week. Come today. Bring the papers. Silence. Then carefully, Dad, are you sure you sound... I woke up and couldn't smell my coffee. I let the words crack. Nothing, not even bitterness. It's all gone, son. Muffled conversation on his end. When Benjamin came back, his voice was smooth, with barely contained excitement. We'll be there by 2. Thank you. I made it surrender. I want this over. He arrived at exactly 2 o'clock with Francesca in a bakery box. The power of attorney documents were pristine in a leather folder. I met them in my bathrobe, let my hand shake on the doorframe. Benjamin's eyes gleamed. Dad, you look terrible. I feel terrible. I shuffled toward the living room. What's that smell? Something's burning. Francesca set the cake on the coffee table. Chocolate Theodore, your favorite. I leaned over it and jerked back. That's not chocolate. It smells like burnt rubber, like chemicals. Are you trying to poison me? Benjamin's hand found my shoulder. Dad, your nose is confused. Let's get these signed so you can rest. He spread the documents across the table. General power of attorney cream paper, his lawyer's seal embossed at the bottom. My name waiting for a signature. I reached for the pen, fumbled for reading glasses, knocked them to the floor. When I straightened my elbow, caught the water carafe. Crystal met mahogany. Water flooded the documents, ink bleeding seal dissolving. No. Benjamin lunged, but too late. The power of attorney was ruined. I'm sorry. I made my voice crack. My hands don't work anymore. He stood holding dripping paper face, cycling through rage and forced patience. It's fine, he said through clenched teeth. We'll print new ones, Monday. No, at the office. Friday. I looked up, confusion clouding my eyes. The board meeting, everyone there. If I'm signing away 40 years, I want witnesses. So everyone knows it was my choice. Benjamin glanced at Francesca. She nodded slightly. Witnesses would make it harder to contest later. Okay, Dad. Friday at the board meeting. They left soon after. I watched their car disappear down the drive, then waited for dark. Martin arrived after 11, parking behind the old barn. We met at the oak tree on the property's eastern edge, the same tree where my father had taught me to prune vines 50 years ago. What's this about? Martin's voice was rough with concern. I handed him a vial. My son is poisoning me. This is what he's using. Martin held it to the moonlight, then looked at me. Didn't question, didn't ask if I was certain. Just, what do you need? The vintage collection, every bottle. It needs to be moved before Friday. Moved where? Anywhere Benjamin can't find it. I kept my voice level. He's planning to destroy it. I need it gone by Thursday night. Martin was quiet. Then he squeezed my shoulder hard. The wine will be safe, old friend. I swear it. He didn't ask why. 35 years together meant trust without explanation, but I saw understanding in his eyes. He knew what I was asking could cost him everything if we failed. Thursday night, I repeated. Martin nodded and disappeared into darkness. I stood alone under the oak, looking back at the house where my son had tried to steal my life. 4 days until Friday. The endgame had begun. For 4 days I played the dying patriarch, shuffled when they watched, fumbled with wine glasses, let them see exactly what they wanted to see. But alone in the lab, I was healing. I drank zinc-rich solutions 3 times a day, detoxed with activated charcoal and milk thistle. By Monday, I could taste the bitterness in my coffee. By Tuesday, the oak barrels in the cellar smelled like oak again, not nothing. I kept it hidden. When Benjamin visited, and he visited often now, circling like a vulture waiting for death, I made sure to squint at labels I could read perfectly, to sniff wine and declare it odorless. He grew confident, careless. Wednesday afternoon, I sat in the living room, pretending to doze while Benjamin paced the garden phone pressed to his ear. He thought the French doors were closed, but I'd left them cracked open an inch. His voice drifted through clearly. Friday night the tankers roll in, he was saying. We'll have crews working through the weekend. Flush it all, every barrel, every bottle. By Monday we'll have cash. Silence while he listened. I don't care what it's worth at auction. Benjamin's voice turned sharp. I need liquid assets now. The casino's not going to wait. Just process it all as industrial base. Nobody needs to know we're dumping $30 million worth of vintage wine down a drain. My hands clenched on the armrest. Yeah, the old man's signing Friday morning. After that, the estate's mine. We'll rebrand by end of month. Your fresh, clean line will be on shelves by Christmas." He laughed at something on the other end. "Trust me, Theodore Beaumont won't know what hit him. By the time he realizes what we're doing, he'll be too senile to stop it." The call ended. Benjamin walked back inside, saw me sleeping in the chair, and smiled. Later that evening, while Benjamin showered upstairs, I went to his room. His briefcase sat on the bed, unlocked. Arrogant or stupid, maybe both. Inside I found the rebrand proposal. The first page showed my logo, the elegant script S entwined with grapevines that my grandfather had designed in 1952. Across it, a red X. The next page made my stomach turn. New logo garish green and orange. Blocky sans serif font screaming, "Beaumont Fresh Clean." Below it, product mock-ups. My hand-blown crystal bottles. Vessels that once held evening in Paris and golden autumn, now filled with neon blue liquid. The labels read, "All-Purpose, Bathroom Cleaner, Toilet Bowl Power Gel, Pipe Unblocker, Maximum Strength. The Scent of Clean by Beaumont." The tagline at the bottom perverting everything my family had built. They weren't just stealing the winery. They were turning 3 generations of craftsmanship into bathroom chemicals. My name, Catherine's memory. My father's legacy reduced to toilet bowl commercials. I thought of Catherine's photo in the lab, her laughing face as she'd helped me blend the 1998 vintage. "This one's special, Theodore," she'd said. "People will remember this wine long after we're gone." They'd remember it as Drain Cleaner instead. I closed the briefcase hands steady despite the rage burning through me. Benjamin wanted to flush my life's work down literal drains. Wanted to make the Beaumont name synonymous with cheap chemicals and lie-filled promises. Thursday night, the trucks would come. Benjamin didn't know that yet, but his precious collection, every bottle he planned to destroy would vanish. I'd make sure of it. And Friday morning, when he discovered what I'd done when he stood in those empty cellars, surrounded by nothing but his own greed, I'd be there to watch his face. 4 days of playing weak were almost over. Thursday night, we'd take back what was mine. The cellars had always felt like a cathedral. Stone walls thick as centuries' air cool and still perfumed with oak and thyme. Tonight, it felt like a vault we were robbing. Except we were stealing from thieves. Martin's refrigerated truck backed up to the cellar entrance at 11 sharp headlights off. 3 vineyard workers climbed out, faces grim. No one spoke. We worked in silence, glass clinking bottles, sliding carefully from their wooden racks. 40 years of my life lined those stone walls, each vintage a memory trapped in glass. The 1974 that Catherine and I had made during our honeymoon summer. The 1982 that won gold at the Paris International Competition. The 1998 that critics still called my defining masterpiece. And the 1987, Benjamin's birth year. I'd made 20 cases that vintage and kept every bottle. They were supposed to be opened at milestones his wedding day, the birth of his first child, the afternoon he'd take over the winery, with pride instead of poison. Celebrations that would never happen now. I pulled one bottle from its slot in the rack. The label had yellowed slightly. Over 37 years, the wax seal cracked with age. Inside, the wine had been maturing patiently, waiting for a moment worthy of it. "Made this when he was born," I said quietly. Martin had come to stand beside me. Saved it for the day he'd earned it. Martin looked at the bottle, then at me. His weathered face was sad but firm. "Save it for someone who deserves it." I nodded once and placed it carefully in the padded wooden crate. Someone would drink this wine someday. Someone who understood what it meant to build something slowly with patience and love. Just not my son. The crew worked through the night with methodical silence. Every bottle cataloged, wrapped in protective tissue, loaded into climate-controlled trucks. The 1950s reserves my father had made with his own hands. The 60s vintages that established Beaumont's reputation across California. The experimental blends I'd been aging in Hungarian oak, waiting for them to reach their full potential. We replaced them all with decoys. Bottles filled with water, tinted red with food coloring, scented with cheap synthetic wine essence Martin had picked up from a restaurant supply warehouse. From a distance in the cellar's dim lighting, they looked authentic. Up close, they were completely worthless, just like Benjamin's promises had turned out to be. By 5 a.m, the final truck pulled away into the gray pre-dawn darkness. The cellars looked exactly the same. Bottles still gleaming in their racks, dust motes still floating through air that smelled of oak, but every single one was now a carefully crafted lie. I locked the heavy cellar door and walked back to the main house. Managed 2 hours of restless sleep on my study sofa. When I woke, the sun was rising over the vineyard. I showered and dressed, not in the cardigan Benjamin expected, but in my charcoal wool suit. The same one I'd worn to bury Catherine 10 years ago. Today I'd bury something else. The board meeting started at 9. I drank coffee, could actually taste it now, bitter and real, and looked at myself in the mirror. Clear eyes, steady hands. Benjamin thought he'd already won. He was about to learn what happened when you came after a Beaumont. Friday morning, I stood before the mirror straightening my tie. On the dresser behind me, Catherine smiled from her photograph. 10 years had passed, yet her voice was as clear as if she were standing beside me. Do what's right, Theodore, not what's easy. The photo was taken in the vineyard during harvest 20 years ago. She wore her old straw hat, laughing freely. Back when Benjamin was 17, before the gambling, before Francesca, before the poison. I remembered her final days in the hospital. Pancreatic cancer had taken her in 6 cruel months. Near the end, when the morphine blurred everything else, she squeezed my hand. Take care of Benjamin, she whispered. He needs guidance. I had promised her I would. I failed you, I murmured to the photograph. I couldn't save him, but I can stop him. Doubt crept in as it always did. I could sign the papers, accept the coastal condo disappear quietly. He was my son, my only child, Catherine's baby. But then I remembered something else she once said years ago when a rival tried to bully us into selling the winery. Don't let anyone destroy what you love, Theodore. Not for money, not for peace. Even if that someone was Benjamin. I picked up the 2 crystal decanters. One held clean water for the board members. The other contained the poison sample from my lab, mixed with cheap wine, the same mixture Benjamin had been giving me for months. Before leaving, I checked my phone. Late Thursday night, after the wine heist, I'd made one last call, Detective James Porter. We'd known each other for 20 years. I'll be there Friday morning, he said. Just give me the signal. The drive to San Francisco took an hour. Napa Valley glowed in the early light vineyards, stretching endlessly. These were the roads Catherine and I once drove, dreaming of the legacy we'd leave Benjamin. She believed the winery would unite us across generations. Instead, it exposed his greed. By 8:45, I was in the financial district, riding an elevator to the 15th floor with a basket of decanters in my hands, like a man bringing wine to a celebration. Vintech Global was all glass and steel, cold, lifeless. The conference room doors stood open. I stepped inside, and at the head of the table sat a man I'd never expected to see again. A ghost from my past, the man I once trusted more than anyone, my former best friend. Lawrence Garrett looked exactly as he had 30 years ago, only refined by wealth. The same sharp jawline, the same arrogant tilt of his head. Success had made him sleeker, but it hadn't changed the essential calculation. In his eyes, the look of a man who always needed to win. I set my briefcase on the polished table. Lawrence Garrett. My voice was steady. I should have known. His smile was smooth as aged brandy. Theodore, it's been too long. Has it? I pulled out my chair slowly, let the silence stretch. Seems like you've been closer than I thought. Benjamin shifted in his seat. Francesca's hand found his under the table. The board members watched with the careful neutrality of people paid to witness transactions. Jennifer Crawford, Vintech's legal counsel, had her pen poised above a yellow pad. Brian Matthews, the CFO, checked his Rolex. Stephen Palmer, COO, simply waited. Well, Lawrence spread his hands. Shall we begin? I understand you're ready to sign. I looked at my son. His collar was damp despite the air conditioning. In a moment, I said, but first I'd like to observe a tradition. My father taught me that you never finalize a deal without sharing wine. It's how we honored partnerships at Beaumont. Lawrence's smile tightened fractionally. Theodore, I don't think... Just a formality. I lifted 2 decanters from my briefcase, crystal catching the fluorescent light. Nothing elaborate. A simple test of the senses. After all, if Vintech is acquiring Beaumont's legacy, you should understand what makes our wine special. I poured the first decanter into a glass and slid it to Jennifer Crawford. This is from our 2018 reserve. Tell me what you smell. She leaned over it cautiously. Blackberry, oak, something earthy maybe, truffle. Exactly right. I poured glasses for Brian and Stephen. Both gave similar answers. Competent, educated palates. Then I reached for the second decanter. And this, I said, is something rarer. I poured for Lawrence first. The liquid was pale gold, unremarkable. He lifted it to his nose, and I watched his face for the flicker of recognition that would confirm everything. Nothing. He inhaled deeply, then smiled. Delicate, floral notes, honeysuckle perhaps. And is that white pepper? My chest tightened. Benjamin, I poured him a glass. What do you smell? My son's hand trembled as he lifted it. He knew something was wrong, but couldn't place what. His eyes darted to Francesca, then to Lawrence. Oak, he said finally. Cherry, maybe. Earth. The same fumbling vocabulary he'd always used when pretending to understand wine. I set the decanter down very carefully. Interesting, I said, because what you're smelling, both of you, is industrial zinc waste, mixed with a sulfite receptor blocker. The same compound I've been ingested for 6 months. The poison designed to destroy my palate. The room went absolutely still. Jennifer Crawford's pen froze mid-stroke. Brian Matthews stopped breathing. Stephen Palmer's eyes went wide. Lawrence recovered first. Theodore, that's absurd. You're clearly unwell. Then why I interrupted? Did you describe it as honeysuckle? Why did Benjamin smell cherry? I turned to Jennifer. You correctly identified the 2018 reserve, but they identified poison as something pleasant, because their noses work fine. Mine doesn't. Not anymore. Benjamin's face had gone white. Dad, you don't what? I leaned forward. Don't know that Vintech's industrial division manufactures zinc colliders. Don't know that Lawrence has been supplying you with exactly the right compound to destroy a winemaker's senses, without killing him. Francesca stood abruptly. This is insane. We're leaving. Sit down. My voice cut like a blade. We're not finished. Lawrence's jaw tightened. His hands flat on the table had gone very still. Jennifer Crawford set down her pen with a soft click. Mr. Garrett, I think we need to. What you need, I said, reaching for my briefcase, is to see proof. Benjamin's face was chalk. Lawrence's veneer had cracked, revealing something cold and ancient beneath. And I wasn't finished yet. I pulled lab reports from my briefcase and spread them across the table. December zinc at 90 micrograms per deciliter. Normal. I tapped each page. March 52. May 31. Last week, 18 clinical deficiency. 6 months of documented poisoning. Jennifer Crawford scanned the numbers face draining. I turned to Lawrence. 30 years ago, you wanted mass production, fast profit, dilute Beaumont across cheap bottles. You refused, Lawrence said, because it would destroy my father's legacy. So I bought you out. $2.5 million. And built a $120 million empire? Lawrence stood. While I failed at everything, then founded Vintech to prove you wrong. His voice hardened. But I still hated you, because you succeeded your way. Made me look like a fool for choosing profit over purity. He gripped the table. So when I found Benjamin drowning in $3.2 million of debt, I saw my chance. Vintech Labs provided the poison slow, untraceable, just enough to destroy your senses. Then I'd dump your precious vintage collection, dilute every legendary bottle into $19 grocery store garbage. The room was silent. 10 years ago, I said, I sent you 12 letters. Registered mail. I gestured to Patricia in the doorway. Catherine had died. I had heart disease. I offered you equal partnership in a $100 million estate. Patricia stepped forward with receipts. 12 letters delivered between 2014 and 15. Never answered. Lawrence's face went white. You tried to reconcile. I tried to give you redemption. You were too consumed by revenge to notice. I set my phone down and pressed play. Benjamin's voice filled the room. The old man can't taste anything. Friday we close, tankers roll, flush the whole collection, turn Dad's legacy into toilet cleaner money. Mom would probably want this. She always said he loved wine more than us. Cruel laughter. My throat tightened. Catherine loved you more than life. Her last words were, take care of Benjamin. This would destroy her. Benjamin's face crumpled. Dad! You had 10 years to honor her memory. My voice nearly broke. You chose this. I stood. You wanted the vintage collection. Martin moved every bottle Thursday night. Your tankers will find colored water. Benjamin whispered, "That's impossible." The door opened. Detective Porter stepped in with officers. "Benjamin Beaumont Lawrence Garrett, you're under arrest for conspiracy attempted murder and fraud." Handcuffs clicked. Benjamin collapsed, sobbing. Francesca screamed about lawyers. Lawrence stared at me. I could have been part of something great. Twice. Yes, I said. You could have. They led him away. The room emptied. I stood alone at the window watching the financial district below. I'd won. Saved the winery. Exposed the conspiracy. But victory tasted like ash. I'd buried my son today. Just not, literally. 6 months later, spring came to Napa Valley the way it always did, slowly, then all at once. The vines didn't care about betrayal. They just kept growing. And I learned that people could too. Dawn broke over Beaumont Estate, painting the vineyard gold. Hannah walked beside me between the rose notebook in hand, eyes bright with questions. "How do you know when the grapes are ready?" she asked. I touched a cluster, felt the weight. "You taste them, not with your mouth, with your heart." She smiled the same smile from that night at the French Laundry, when she showed me the truth that changed everything. Benjamin got 7 years federal. Conspiracy attempted murder fraud. Francesca divorced him within a month, walked away with nothing. Lawrence got 15 years. Vintech Global collapsed within weeks, shareholders fleeing the scandal. My senses returned slowly. First salt, then sweetness, then finally the complex notes I'd spent 40 years learning to distinguish. Cedar and blackberry, leather and earth, like waking from a bitter dream. "Wait here," I told Hannah. I returned with a dusty bottle, Beaumont Reserve 1987. The year my son was born, I made this vintage to celebrate his future. I turned it in my hands, kept it 37 years for a celebration that never came. I opened it carefully the way my father taught me. Poured 2 glasses, watched morning light catch in the amber liquid. Hannah lifted hers, tears forming. "It's beautiful." "Taste it first." She did, and her expression shifted surprise, wonder, understanding. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Yes." I met her eyes. "And now it's yours. This legacy. All of it." Her hand trembled. "Theodore, you don't carry my blood, Hannah, but you're my heir. You saved my life. You understand what matters: integrity, quality, truth. You care about the craft, not just profit." I paused. "That's what Beaumont means. Not a name. A promise." She wiped her eyes. "I won't let you down." "I know." I looked across the vineyard. I used to think legacy was about blood, passing something to your children because they're yours. Catherine knew better. She always said family wasn't biology. It was about who showed up, who cared, who stayed when things got hard. I looked up at the brightening sky. I kept my promise, Catherine. I took care of him by stopping him, and I found someone worthy to carry on what we built. Hannah touched my arm. "What's your dream now?" I watched the vines reaching toward the sun, thought about poison disguised as vitamins, betrayal hidden behind Sunday dinners, a son who'd mocked his mother's memory for money. "To make wine that tells the truth," I said. "No more lies, no more pretending, just honest work that tastes like what it is." She smiled through tears. "Then let's do that together. This time the story ends with hope." The sun rose over the vineyard, gilding every leaf. I lifted my glass of the 87 vintage Benjamin's birth year, now Hannah's inheritance, and tasted something I hadn't tasted in over a year. Not ash, not regret, not the metallic bitterness of betrayal. Hope. Legacy isn't blood, it's spirit, it's dedication, it's love for the craft and respect for what came before. And sometimes the family you choose holds together stronger than the family you're born into. The vines didn't care about my pain. They just kept growing, reaching for light, doing what they were meant to do. And finally, so did I. Sitting in the quiet of my vineyard, I reflect on my life as one of those bittersweet grandpa stories. Don't be like me. Don't spend 40 years building a $120 million empire only to realize that the deadliest poison can be served at your own dinner table. My painful lesson is this: never mistake shared blood for shared values. God gave me the palate to create world-class wine, but my own blindness almost allowed my son Benjamin to turn that gift into bathroom cleaner. This is a true story of betrayal and ultimate awakening. My advice to you is to stay vigilant against the sweet whispers of those who only covet your crown. If God had not intervened through the courage of Hannah Brooks, I would have ended my days rotting in a lonely condo, stripped of my dignity. Do not wait until you lose your senses to realize the stench of greed around you. Remember, a real legacy isn't found in boastful grandpa stories, but in the integrity of the soul. I am grateful that God granted me a second chance to tell this true story and save what Catherine and I built together. Life will eventually become one of those grandpa stories told to the next generation. Make sure yours is a true story of resilience rather than a tragedy of misplaced trust. What do you think about the fate of my family? Please leave a comment, share this post, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more TINH to Hey, sophisticated and great content.